seat. So we'll go ahead and just get started. My name's Eddie Samson. I'm with Instructure, the company that's created Canvas. I've been with the company almost 4 years, so I've seen a lot of growth on the West Coast. I have the West Coast. So Washington, Oregon, California. I actually have Nevada and Hawaii and Alaska as well. Yeah. So I've never traveled to Alaska. Hawaii once. I really didn't need to go, but I made it. The great thing is I'll let my solution engineer, David, he's the technical one. He's also taught on Canvas, so I'm going to let him walk you through the platform. I'm just going to basically introduce him and just kind of talk a little bit about Instructure, the company, and if you guys have any questions about the company, feel free to shoot. If you're not familiar, does anyone know the story of how Canvas came about? Come on. So back in 2008.
Why would we know?
It's an interesting story. Back in 2008, at Brigham Young University, 2 students were taking, they were getting a master's degree in computer science. And they were, as of course, part of a master's degree, take entrepreneurship. They were in that class and basically challenged to take, create a business. And right away, those 2 kids were like, running management systems. You can imagine back to 2008, running management systems, what they looked like back then. We've come a long ways. They just felt like, yeah, we're technologists, we're nerds, geeks. We are having troubles in our current system that we're using right now. We definitely think we could do better than this. So they took the idea actually to their instructor, the professor, the adjunct professor at BYU, and he had, he'd gone through the .coms. He actually started one company, failed miserably, did another company and sold it for millions and was kind of semi-retired and being an adjunct at BYU. So he heard these 2 young kids' ideas, and he's like, you guys are on to something. I'm a technologist. Love that idea. This is a broken space, in his opinion, he said. And he's like, go for it. He's like, before you guys write any code, before you guys start building this thing, go out and meet customers. Go out to the campuses, meet admins, meet instructors, meet the folks who are in every day, meet you guys are students, so they have a good student perspective, right? So that summer, 2 poor grad students took off on the road trip. We actually have pictures of their car, a tiny little Metro. Primarily came out to California because they had family in California. So they visited 17 institutions, campuses, community colleges, 4 years, technical schools, and got a lot of feedback, wrote code, and now they're at Canvas. What was the number 1 complaint you think back 2008 was? The feedback. What was the number 1 complaint? Any guesses? Cost? Gradebook. So overall, they just said too many clicks. Clunky, right? And so in order to do anything, it's 10 clicks versus intuitive technology that we have today with social media platforms, the internet, just 1 or 2 clicks. So that's what they set out to do, is create something that was going to be super user friendly and that was intuitive to modern technology. Other ideas, 2 other things that stick out to me was the systems were always down. Folks were either updating them or they were broken. So, 2008, that's when cloud technology was taking off, so they were just right away like, we're going to take it to the cloud. So we're native to the cloud. We run on Amazon Web Services. We have a contract with them. They guarantee us 99.9% uptime. And we actually do better than that. Our engineers have got it up to 4 nines, 99.99% of the time. And again, we're just dealing with modern technology, and it's easy to kind of control that. With that said, another fascinating thing that I think is cool is we're multi-tenant, meaning you guys have, we're versionless software. So Canvas, every 3 weeks actually we update our software. Very similar to social media platforms, to Amazon. You're going to purchase something, you don't see big changes. You just see bug fixes and changes in the back. So we have modest UI changes, gradual, so you don't have to go through a year-end. Here's a new version of Canvas and go through a ton of training. So it's very simple, easy to use. Going back to that multi-tenant, you guys are using the same version that Harvard's using, that Duke's using, that So again, I have the West Coast, so the community colleges in Washington, they all adopted Canvas about 3 years ago. So this isn't the first go-around where the state, as a community college system, has taken on Canvas. So all the community colleges in Utah, Nevada are on Canvas as well. So for the West Coast, we're doing pretty good. We have 6 CCs. UC Davis, UC Santa Cruz recently transitioned over, and then the CSU system, half the students, half the enrollment in the CSU come from community colleges. So they really took a look at that. They opened up an RFP and they placed Canvas as one of their preferred vendors. So recently, Northridge, Cal State Northridge, the largest CSU, is transitioning over to Canvas. They just signed their contract last month, and as well Humboldt State. So we now have those two in San Jose State on board with many local CSUs looking at Canvas as well. Any questions up to this point? No questions? We're going to just go ahead and jump to Canvas. That's what you guys all came in to see.
Thanks, sir. Everybody hear me all right? There's like mics all over the place. I want to make sure. Am I coming through over there? Awesome. So like Eddie said, my name is David Lyons. I get to travel around on the West Coast with him and share Canvas with folks like you all. I've actually only been with the company for about 1.5 years, but before that, I was actually a customer for 2.5 years. So I was a LMS admin for the University of Colorado, Denver, and the Anschutz Medical Campus. I helped go Lynx. I helped move them over from there too. They had 2 legacy platforms at the same time, which is like over beers. We could talk about why that was a terrible idea. And then they decided to consolidate down to Canvas. And they brought me on to help them with that transition and to stay on and train their faculty. And I also worked for their College of Education as an adjunct, trying to stay close to the faculty experience. So I've spent a lot of time with LMSs. My whole career has been in educational technology, teaching, administrating, staff, student. My entire master's program was all online. Unfortunately, not in Canvas. It was too long ago. But this has really been a big part of what I'm doing, and I really love getting to come out and share this with you guys. While we're going through today, I think in the time we have, I really want to hit on some highlights. Canvas is a powerful tool. It's very extensible, so there's a lot that can be added on to it. So we definitely won't have time to see everything. So what I would love to do is 2 things. One, as we're going through, I would love for you guys to focus on the user experience. So Eddie said when our founders were going around, what they just kept hearing over and over and over was like, we know the tool can do these things, but it's such a hassle to figure out, or it takes so long to do, we don't even want to do it. And that's been built into what we've decided to build since day one. So the user experience, what it feels like to actually use Canvas, right? There are things that we just expect the LMS to have. They should have quizzes and discussions and assignments, right? All LMSs have these things. But are they usable? Are they accessible? Are they discoverable? Is it intuitive to actually use? So everything that we build, and even things we choose not to build, is because we're really focused on that user experience. And I say user and not faculty or student or staff because all of those experiences have to be highly polished. It has to be usable for faculty so that you guys want to build courses. It has to be usable for your students so they actually want to get in there and engage with the material. For the administrators and the staff, it has to be usable so that they can set it up in a way that's going to work well for you all. So as we're going through, feel free to ask questions. I think we'll have some time at the end for kind of general Q&A, but no reason you can't ask questions. I think there's a couple roaming mics over here, and I know we're being recorded, so if you have a question, just hand up, and my lovely assistant here will run over with the microphone. I do hope that this doesn't pick me up coughing too much. I have an adorable 3-year-old, and her favorite game is get dad sick, so I'm fighting off a little bit of a cold, but the lovely weather is helping. I'm actually based out of Colorado. It is not like this in Colorado today.
Sorry to hear that.
Most of the time it's lovely. Today is not lovely. So what you guys are looking at here, this is the Canvas dashboard. Everybody in Canvas gets the same dashboard because everybody only has one user account. So if you're like me and you've kind of lived with multiple hats on at the same time, there are times where I've been a student and staff and faculty all at once. And that always meant in legacy systems, I had a student account, I had a staff account, and I had a faculty account. That was a huge pain, right? In Canvas, everyone is just a Canvas user. So everybody gets the same dashboard. And when you're enrolled in a course, you get the correct kind of access. And what that means is that these tools will show me what's useful to me based on how I'm enrolled. So I happen to be a teacher in all of these courses, so I'm seeing all courses that I'm instructing right here. And on the right side, I have this to-do list. So you'll notice as we go through that there's a lot of things in Canvas that are kind of automated. And a lot of technology people, whether they're in educational technology or just in Silicon Valley style technology, They love to tell you that they're going to save you time. And I try really hard never to say that because I can't give you more time than you have. You and I both have the same amount of time no matter what. What I can do, what we can do with Canvas is automate away the boring stuff and let you spend time on the things that actually matter, right? We want you to be able to engage with the important parts of your work, not the mundane parts. And this to-do list right here on the dashboard is where that really starts to show immediately after you log in. Because I don't have to create this to-do list. When my students turn in work, things show up here. If I click on any of these links, it'll actually take me directly to the grading interface. And then when I grade those students, it goes off the to-do list automatically. So I'm never micromanaging this. Right? Similarly, for my students, it's showing them work they need to submit. Maybe they have a quiz due on Friday, and then they have a paper they have to turn in on Monday. And once they make that submission or they take that quiz, it comes off the to-do list, right? So I'm just seeing things that are useful when they're useful. When they're not useful, they go away. These tiles that I have set up for my courses, these are all customizable. You'll notice when we go to the calendar that these colors actually follow through to the calendar. If you log into Canvas from our free mobile apps, these colors follow through to the mobile app. So wherever I see green, I know that's my business telecom course. If I see this magenta color, I know that's my psychology course. And I can customize these. So I can change the color. And more importantly, I can give these little nicknames. So surely, everybody, are there any students? We have just faculty, right? Okay. So surely all of you have had a course with that one student, right? But I don't want that one student to know that I know that they're in this course, right? So this nickname is just for me, right? If I have a co-instructor or a TA, they don't see that nickname. That nickname is just for me. That also means my students might have clever names for their courses as well, right? But that's just for our organization. If I come over here into the calendar, surely a lot of you use either Google Calendar or maybe an Outlook calendar or something like that. And we've taken a lot of inspiration from that. So this is actually a combined calendar view. So all of my courses can all be turned on at the same time. I can toggle these on and off so that I can see just the courses that I care about, or I can see all of my courses all at once so that I have like a nice overlapping view of everything that's coming up and going on. And you can see those colors, right, carried right over from the dashboard. But the calendar lets me do some cool things as well. I can open any of these up and see the instructions. So this happens to be an assignment, so I can see all the instructions for this assignment. If it's a discussion, I can see the prompt for that discussion that my students are going to be replying to, including things like media. Because I'm an instructor in these courses, I can actually edit or delete these items from right here on the calendar. But I think my favorite thing is probably, if you build courses the way I tend to, you probably think in a very kind of chronological, what are we doing in week 1, what are we doing in week 2, right? And when I'm looking at this, I see that my final exam is kind of way off from where the rest of the course material is, and it's on a Saturday. I probably didn't mean to do that, so I want to change that to Friday. So now it's changed to Friday, right? So I just dragged it right over, the due date updated, and it updated everywhere, right? Because just like the to-do list is pulling things out of the course, the calendar is smart. It's talking to the other parts of Canvas. So it knows to now go update that. It knows to go update the syllabus. It knows to go update my students to send them a notification that that date has changed, right? I don't have to go find the 10 or 20 different places that that due date might show up and actually update them all one at a time. That's boring. That's robot work. As much as I love this calendar, if you're like me and you're deeply invested in Google and you want to use the Google Calendar on your mobile device or on your desktop, you can feed this out to an external calendar tool. So if you live in Outlook, like a lot of faculty do, you can pull this out, and then you can still use these tools when you're in Canvas. But if you just want a quick look at your calendar, you can get all this information piped out to whatever external calendar you're using. But let's look at a specific course. So I'm going to go into my Intro to Psych course here. I actually have this set up for the home page to be the syllabus. You have some options, right? So I can use what we call the course activity stream, which is just notifications about this course. I can have a custom front page, which is just a totally blank slate. I can put any kind of content on it that I like. I can have the modules be my home page, so as soon as my students come in, they're just bang right into the content. The reason I like the syllabus is because I get some more things for free with this. I still have my to-do list like we saw on the dashboard, but now it's just items for this course, right? So it's been scoped down just to the course we're looking at. I still get this area up top where I can put any kind of content that I want. So I have a nice little banner. I've got some information about my office hours. I've actually embedded a document right here. The department I teach for is a little old-fashioned. They still really hate trees, so I have to embed a downloadable copy of my syllabus right here. And what it'll do is it'll actually render that PDF right inside of Canvas. But what I think is even better about this is we're employing something in the background that's called a print style. what a print style allows me to do is if I print this page, just like I would print a Word document or a PDF or something that was stored locally, it's going to intelligently strip away all the browser Chrome and all the buttons and all the navigation and stuff, and they're just going to get the content. So I actually don't have to provide a separate copy of my syllabus because they can just print my Canvas syllabus if they really, really hate paper, I guess. Down here at the bottom, though, when we talk about automation, this to me is the big winner. I'm sure most of you probably teach the same courses semester after semester, right? And that means every semester you have to open up that Word document, that's your syllabus. You have to go down to that big table with all the due dates. You have to update it. It's a nightmare because Word is not designed for editing tables. It is not a fun experience. So we just automated that. So this table of due dates here, this is just a reflection of all of my coursework. So anything that I create that has a due date or that contributes to the grade is going to show up on here automatically. If you remember, that final exam was due on Saturday, and I moved it to the Friday. You can see right there, it's been updated to the Friday, right? I didn't have to come in here and update it. We didn't even have to know that it was there. I just know that anywhere the date is showed, it's going to show the correct date. But what about all this stuff up here at the top? How did I get all this, the banner and all this other content in here? So this tool, now that we're in the editor, this is what we call the rich content editor. Very clever name, right? It's how you get rich content into Canvas. But there's some nice things that are baked into this. So this is bold text, right? Surely some of you have written an email probably in the last few minutes before you came in here. A lot of these buttons are going to look quite familiar, right? You know how to make things bold. You know how to center things, right? You know how to create links, right? So we want to make those things really easy, and there's pretty much an established way to do those. But we're going to make it easy to get rich and interesting content into your courses as well. And one of those is a navigational item. So if I want to tell my students, please go check out, and then I want them to go to a specific module, instead of just saying the modules, right, because that's not very interesting, I can actually send them exactly where I want them to go. I want them to go to the Welcome to this course module. And now that link will actually send them to that module. When I copy this content over next semester, it's going to update that link, so it's not going to try and send them back to last semester, right? It's going to know to carry that over into the future term, right? And we've seen some very interesting things with this where people are actually using their content as navigation. If you remember back in the 80s, like the Choose Your Own Adventure books, I've seen whole courses that are built where it's like, if you're ready to fight the dragon, click here, and it takes you to the final exam. You know, if you think you need some more time in training, click here, and it maybe takes them to a practice quiz, right? So the content itself is actually acting as some of the navigation as well. You saw what it looked like to embed a file there, but I can use any of the files that I've already uploaded, or I can just upload a new file. Very nice and straightforward. And similarly with images, I can upload images. But we also have this built-in Flickr search. So who's ever needed an image for their course, and you go out to Google, and you do a Google image search, right? Anyone ever done that? Okay, so we're all complicit in the crime now, because you know this copyright infringement, right? Okay, so this can never leave this room. Quick, turn off the recording. So what we have baked in here is this idea of this Flickr search, and it's only going to search Creative Commons. So if you've never used Creative Commons, really all this means is some generous creative person said, I made a thing, you can use it for free. So I know that anything this turns up is going to be tagged Creative Commons, and that means it's safe for me to use it in my course without any copyright fears. So I find a picture, I select it, I get an adorable cat. Right? We handle the attribution by linking back to the source, so now that image is there, you don't have to do anything else. I don't have to go find it, download it, re-upload it, right? It's just, I'm off to the races. Similarly for YouTube, I've noticed increasingly people want to use YouTube because it's kind of a drop-dead simple way to host a video, right? You may not have something on campus where you have a place to host videos. You may not want to go to some kind of like shady website, but YouTube has like ads and all these like kind of, you got to worry about embed codes and things. So with this search that's integrated, I can find the video that I want, like Keyboard Cat, and then say I want to embed it, and it just drops it right in. If I don't like the size of the preview, I can just click and drag to resize it just like I would with an image. And even if you know how to go to YouTube and get the embed code and come back into Canvas and switch into the HTML viewer, it's just a lot of extra steps, right? So we've streamlined that as much as we possibly could. And you'll see, once I save these changes that I made, I'm going to play. I don't have the audio hooked up, but I actually want you to see something with this video. So I'm just going to play a few seconds of this. It's a really weird video, right? But did everybody see the ad at the beginning? Yeah? You saw the ad at the beginning? No, you did not see an ad at the beginning because we actually just chop it off. right? And then at the end of YouTube videos, it pops up the big grid of videos you should go watch next. We cut that off too, right? So now you can feel a lot more comfortable putting a TED Talk or a scientific demonstration or some kind of video that you create that you're hosting on YouTube into your course, because your students are going to be tempted to switch to Geico Insurance or something when they should be watching course content, right? So you can now employ these kinds of external resources inside your course, I think with a little bit higher level of confidence. So the last two things I'll say about the rich content editor. Our engineers, like any good engineers, are lazy engineers. You don't build the same thing more than once. So we were just editing my syllabus, but if I was editing a content page or an assignment or a discussion, if I was creating quiz questions or quiz answers, anywhere that I'm creating content in Canvas, I'm going to use those same buttons, the same tools, in the same order. So you only have to learn how to use one rich content editor, and then you know how to edit content anywhere in Canvas. And the other thing is, because we have a very student-centric view of our design, right? Our founders were both students. They were in the middle of their graduate program when they started Canvas. That's the same set of tools your students get. So if I create a discussion that's full of videos and images and links and things, I'm not just providing rich content to my students, I can insist that they provide it back. One of my colleagues in the College of Education where I'm an adjunct, his entire introductory discussion in class, he was just really tired of saying, where'd you go to high school? What's your favorite ice cream, right? All those kind of boring things. So he makes his students sing the theme to their favorite TV show, right? Just using that built-in video embed. And then every reply has to be the other students guessing what that song was, right? So no text, it's just an entire discussion of video, right? Just using the native tools right inside Canvas. So before I jump into modules and we talk a little bit about course organization, any questions about either the dashboard or the rich content editor? Sure.
Can I switch tomorrow?
Yes, you may.
Can we conclude and go home?
Can I ask one question about the video
Yeah.
embed? And we have Sarah here who was so great in getting our streaming video for the library. Can you link it there too, or would you have a different?
Which provider are you using for the?
We have films on demand for infographics and also Canopy streaming.
Yeah, so let me give you guys a visual for how that kind of thing works. So there's a standard in educational technology called LTI, and all LTI really is it's a way for third-party tools to talk to each other. It allows for things like single sign-on and grade pass-back if it's an assignment kind of a tool. That YouTube tool that you actually just saw a minute ago that looks like a completely native part of Canvas, that's actually an LTI that our engineers built. So that gives you an idea of how tightly knit that experience can be. And Films on Demand has an LTI that you can integrate right into Canvas. You get a very similar experience to what we just saw with YouTube, right? The cool thing about LTI is that it's an open standard. We're a completely open company. All of our code is open source. We adhere to all these open ideals. We even have an open office floor plan in our main office. And what that means is no one has to get our permission or pay us money, or we don't gatekeep anyone to build an integration with Canvas. So if there's a tool that you want to work with, like a Films on Demand, they actually, up until I think about a year ago, they did not have an LTI. And then a lot of Canvas customers got together and said, we are going to find someone else if you don't get your act together. But the good news for Films on Demand is, because this is an open standard, they're now done, right? Any LMS that adheres to this open standard can now benefit from this. And that's why we're being a big driver of using this standard. We want to see this kind of innovation. We want this to open up. So this is at the course level. Because you guys are using this campus-wide, you could just configure it once for the entire institution, and then everyone would have access to it. But you can actually configure these LTIs in your course. So if you're a chemistry professor and you really want to use a tool that doesn't make sense to use campus-wide, you can turn that on in just your course, and then it's not going to show up in the English and the art history courses and everything else.
We have a proxy that we have before our links to the databases. Is that something that you can integrate here so when students are accessing at home, it prompts them for
I'm pretty sure it's part of their configuration, because that's something that they're supporting. Yeah, but I mean, they're allowing to proxy through your network. Yeah, so you'd set that up during your config. Yeah, which would be a good reason to do it once at that root level, so then everybody can just use it.
Excuse me, I have a question. A couple of our math faculty have been really concerned with Blackboard and obviously the way it is. Scientific notation. how is that in the editing mode? And would they be able to write the scientific notation? Because it seems to be really cumbersome in what they're using now. Is there a way to do it easily so that that can happen?
Excuse me. So we do have built in this math equation editor. And this is just part of the rich content editor that's in Canvas. There are several other tools that are free. I think one of them is called Wiris, and there's another one that I'm drawing a blank on the name of, but that you would find in that LTI list that are very specialized to specific disciplines like engineering and chemistry. This is more of a general purpose equation editor, so for things like scientific notation, this would work great. I'm not a math person, so if there's any math instructors in here, I apologize for what you're about to say. But, so I could say, like, I want the cube root of 9, and then, yeah, right, the cube root of 9 squared. Let's stop there before I embarrass myself further. The important thing to know about this is for those of us who are well-sighted, this is just very easy kind of point and click. If you are particularly advanced and you know LaTeX, you can actually type LaTeX directly into here. And then on the back end, when we insert this equation in, we're actually using what's called MathML, and all you really need to know about that is that that is a standards-compliant way that will make this work with a screen reader. So if I write something on like a sticky note and take a picture of it, that works fine for my sighted students, but for anybody who has a visual impairment, they don't know what that sticky note says, right? For those of us who are sighted, this just looks like an image, and it's lovely formatted and everything, but when a screen reader gets to that, it will read it correctly, right? So that's one of the advantages of using that built-in equation editor. That also extends, right, because that's part of the rich content editor, that would extend to things like pages and discussions and quizzes as well. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, yeah.
Does it have a caption?
For video? Yeah, so if I either author a video in here, or if I upload a video that I have, we integrated with a captioning service. I don't have it configured right here just because it's part of the production environments. This is a demonstration environment, but it's included, it's integrated for free. And what it's going to do is basically pop the video up right here, and then underneath it, I have an area where I can just add my captions. There are services, I cannot remember the name of the organization, that you have access to in California that will do captioning for you. So you basically send your video to them and say, please give this back to me with captions. And that's something that's community college system-wide. So you have that option as well. And then anything that has captions already, like a YouTube video that's already captioned, those are, of course, supported. Any other ones before we jump into modules? Okay. Oh, yes.
Our other streaming video service is called Canopy with a K. I don't know if that's something, if it's not already integrated, is that something that Canvas would entertain?
I'm not familiar with that one, but this is part of being open, right, is there's absolutely no reason they can't be integrated, right? So usually that third party maintains their integration, like Films on Demand maintains their own integration, Kaltura maintains their integration, and so on like this. So if they don't have one, you could request that they make one. We have a professional services department. We're happy to build those where it's possible for us to help as well.
Okay, thanks.
Does Canopy work with a lot of the other schools?
Yeah, I think so.
Just because 92 of the colleges are Canvas one.
Yeah, that's something that I can bring up with the students,
So I just Googled it, and there's a YouTube video that says how to embed Canopy clip in Canvas. You can not only link, but also embed Canopy's training video clips in Canvas. So Googling is great.
Thank you, Eddie. So I've come into the modules here. There's a lot of different ways you can organize a Canvas course. In online courses and hybrid and face-to-face supported courses in general, I think there's a lot of different ways you can organize them. I'm a big fan of organizing in modules, not just because it's easier for me when I'm building my course, but it's easier for my students to understand the course material. And when you come in here again, there's some little things you kind of get for free by using the modules, right? I'm a big fan of automation. So when I look at this, I'm seeing all the different types of content I have. My modules are really just containers of stuff. So I have mine broken out into lessons, but I could just as easily call these weeks or chapters if I'm following a textbook, or projects if you have a project-based course. Each content item Gets a nice little indicator next to it about what type it is. So again, if you structure in a very kind of unified way where every week ends with a quiz, for example, I can quickly look and say, is the last thing in each module a quiz? Is it an assignment? Is it a discussion? Do they need to be uniform? And if I do realize I've made a mistake and I want to reorganize things, I can just click and drag, right? Now that module is restructured. I can move things between modules. So if I want to kind of rechange the way my weeks are balanced, I can even click and drag entire modules. So if you're following a textbook and you want to do chapters out of order, you can rearrange that whole course. And one of the things I like about Canvas is that there's very little that's ever set in stone. So right now, this course could have not started. It could be live, right? I could be changing week 5 in the middle of week 4 because I realize there's something I want to do differently. So we don't want you to be trapped in the way your course is currently set up just because you've started teaching, right? These things need to stay flexible. Anything that has a due date or score associated with it is automatically going to show up right here. If I come down and find my final exam, I should see if I can find it. There it is. You can see that it was updated from the 20th to the 19th. Again, I didn't have to come in here and make a change. It's just going to show the correct date everywhere that that date should be. Right? So I get a lot of these nice little convenience features with modules from an organizational standpoint. And then from a content delivery standpoint, I also have this idea of prerequisites and requirements. So basically, I can say that a certain item has to be viewed or completed, or that a minimum score has to be achieved before other content is going to become accessible. Right? So I can say they have to contribute to this discussion before they can go on. And I can use as many of these together as I like, so I can have multiple requirements. I can force them to go through the requirements in a certain order. So if you have a very linear structured course, you can have them progress in that exact path. Or you can just leave the doors open and say, whatever, just take the final exam on day 1 if you want. That's how I usually teach my courses. What I want to take a look at in here, though, is this specific assignment. So these are my assignment instructions. I don't have to dive into the rich content editor because it's going to work exactly like we saw earlier. But I will point out that there's also a rubric attached down here. So anything that's graded can have a rubric attached to it. And there's 2 things that I really like about our rubrics. But the most important one to me is that these don't have to be a true matrix. You can see that this criteria on top has 4 different ratings, and then these other criteria only have 3 different ratings. Right? So some of your criteria are going to be pass-fail. Like, did you do this thing? Yes or no. And then other things you're going to have a little bit more granularity with. So each criteria can have whatever flexibility you need it to have. And then if you're doing anything with outcomes, either in your department or campus-wide, any of these criteria can be outcomes, and those are indicated by these little gold flags here. And the reason we kind of understate that a little bit is because it really should be about evaluating the student, providing that feedback, right, having that feedback conversation. So it's indicated what things I'm tracking that are outcomes, but it's not separate from the regular feedback and evaluation process. It's just part of it. And once I actually have submissions, and I'm going to be doing some grading, that's when I come in here to the Speedgrader. If you heard anything about Canvas in the early days of the company, this was probably what you heard. This was one of those things that really, there's just never been anything like it before. It's something we've continued to iterate on and we continue to be very proud of. What I like about this is I remember not that long ago when I first started teaching in Canvas that it meant I never had to think about file management again, right? So this document that my student submitted is actually being rendered right here inside Canvas. I know who submitted it. I know when they submitted it. I can see which assignment this is and which course it's in. Surely most of you, like me, have had to beg your students, please name your assignment _1 _ first name _ last name _ the name of the course, and they never do it right, and then they email it to you from their personal email address, and you're like, who is buddy XX99? Like, I don't have anyone in my course with that name, right? And then you spend all of your time trying to do that file management piece and not the actual evaluation and feedback piece. So being able to cut all that out is already a tremendous victory in my mind. But then I can actually still get the same kind of experience as if I had this printed document. I can grab a pencil here, I can draw, I can send a nice clear message. They say you're not supposed to use red anymore, but I think a red frowny face sends a pretty clear message. I can grab a whole area of text and leave a comment, and I can say these are definitely not real words. All right, I've got my rubric right over here off to the side. and I can just click right through this, and it's going to tally up the score for me if I want it to, so that I'm not even having to worry about that. Sir?
Is that a Word document or a Pages document or a Google Doc document, or they type it in?
So this happens to be a Word document, but it could be a PDF, Word doc, Excel spreadsheet, PowerPoint slides, the open document counterparts for any of those, Google Docs, Office 365 documents, images, videos, typed directly in, as well as any other LTI that would connect into Canvas. You did specifically mention Pages, though, which I'll say the reason we can't render Pages in here is because Apple hasn't opened up that format. We would love to be able to render Pages. The good news, though, is if you do have students that are using Pages and Numbers and Keynote, all of those support exporting to formats that are not owned exclusively by Cupertino. So,
They export it, they open it, they put it in here, and I can read it like that.
exactly right. Yep.
Right now, with PowerPoint, you know,
Yeah, so if
or if it's not a Word document, you can't.
Yeah, so if a student had uploaded a PDF or PowerPoint slides, they would just display in here exactly the same way. Yeah, spreadsheets, images, videos. Down here on the right, you can see I've got some kind of free-form comments. And if you look closely, I know the projector is a little bit washed out, but if you look closely, you can see that there's actually some back and forth happening here. Because when a student comes in to view the feedback that I left them, they get this whole Speedgrader interface. Now, obviously, they can't change their grade. That would be bananas. But they can come in here and grab a different color or a highlighter and mark this up. They can come in and reply to these comments and say, these are words, right? So I can have this whole back and forth conversation. And what I love about this is a lot of evaluation tools are very kind of saint on the mount, right, where we bestow information down to our students. But what this allows me to do is take the office hours experience, where they sit down with a blue pen, I sit down with a green pen, we have their work right in front of us, and we're talking about it, and we're going back and forth, and I can take that experience and kind of blow that up over time and space. Because this conversation can stay open as long as I want it to. We can keep this going for the whole semester if I like, right? Because they can always come in here, we always have the same context, we always know exactly which assignment we're talking about, no confusing emails, no begging them to email me from their school account instead of their personal account, right? All of that context and information is saved right here.
I was just wondering if the feedback is visible anywhere else in Canvas. Do they see any of the feedback in the gradebook, or is it only on the page?
Yeah, so the comments over here on the side will also show up in the gradebook. They also get a notification when there's been a grade and feedback that they need to go check out. Something we actually added maybe just a few months ago is you will get a little notification when you look if the student has not viewed the feedback you left them yet, right? So if they say, no, I swear I looked, you can look and be like, no, you didn't, right? Maybe a little bit more politely than that, but, right? So we want this kind of thing to be open, though, right? And that's why we have the same rich content area for students. That's why they get the same Speedgrader, because we want this experience to be as collaborative and supportive as possible. But sometimes you got to check up on them a little bit. One other thing I'll mention about the Speedgrader that I think is a nice little convenience is because we are built on Amazon Web Services, storage at that scale becomes a little bit more trivial than if you have like a server under the guy's desk down the hall that's running the LMS. So you can see that the student has made many, many other submissions, right? And they're all date and time stamped, and any one of them that received a grade, the grade is stored forever. So students can continue to submit, and if they accidentally submit their shopping list instead of their 30-page term paper, they can't take the shopping list back, but they can go back and resubmit the 30-page term paper like they should have the first time, right? It's going to flag it as late, but the important thing is that I have that history, so I always know any submission that's ever been made to this assignment.
David, you may get to this later, but is there an originality analysis that is associated with Canvas?
So we don't have a built-in, like Turnitin kind of competitor. The community college system has done a group-wide contract with Verifient? Yeah, one of those names. But yeah, so that's something that's going to be available to anybody that's using Canvas in the community college system. The nice thing about those integrations is they build on top of these tools. They don't replace these tools. So if you're using, say you have 3 or 4 courses that you're teaching in and you're only using that plagiarism detection in one course, you're still going to see the same Speedgrader. You're just going to have that extra bit of functionality over here on the side that takes you to that originality report and whatever other functionality they might add in.
Can you talk about
Is that not what I just did? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask, in the feedback, could you include video or audio feedback to the student?
That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
As long with, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why you can do that. Yeah. So right here, I can either record something just straight into the webcam and microphone, or if I have something pre-prepared, maybe that I, from whatever instance that I want to use, I can upload that in the same tool as well. Yeah. That tool is available in the rich content editor too, so I can actually just distribute that anywhere in Canvas that I want to put either video that I have pre-prepared or that I want to do kind of talking head style. The last thing I'll say about Speedgrader before I jump out of here is this happens to be an assignment that a student uploaded, but if you're grading discussions, if you are grading essay quiz questions that can be graded automatically, same grading interface, same buttons, same place, right? Smart, lazy engineers don't build more than one grading interface because then people have to learn more than one grading interface. So even though this is an assignment, you'd see the exact same tools for anything else that you might be evaluating. Oh, excuse me. So I'm going to jump back into my modules. And I want to take a quick look at a quiz here. So I'm sure you guys have noticed, right? I'm not showing you PowerPoint slides of Canvas. I'm showing you the actual product. Before we jump into quizzes, I just want to say quickly that we have a few major initiatives we work on every year along with those small incremental updates. And one of our major initiatives for 2016 is a brand new quizzing engine. I won't spend too much time talking about it because I want to focus on what's in the product right now today. But we have a very public roadmap where we talk about what we're working on that's in our community. And the new quizzing engine that's coming is something we're super excited about. I think what we have now is very, very good. It's something I've always enjoyed building new quizzes in. But the quizzing engine that's coming up is something I think is going to be a little bit more along the lines of Speedgrader, where people look at it and they're like, oh, ooh. But let's take a look at the current quizzes, because I think this is already a pretty solid thing. We've seen some legitimate imitation from in the market. You have kind of all your general settings like you would expect. You can randomize answers, you can set time limits, you can say, do they see their correct answers? If so, when? If so, for how long? Right? All the kind of common general settings you'd expect. Down here at the bottom, I can assign due dates. And I didn't show this on the assignment because I didn't edit that assignment settings, but the due dates are another thing that are common from assignments, discussions, quizzes. And what I like about this is I can easily set additional due dates if I need to. So right now I have a due date for everyone, but if I want to add another, say, how about Aaron? Aaron comes to me with a sob story. He's not going to be able to take the quiz. So I'm like, okay, I'll give you a break. You can have until tomorrow. So now Aaron's to-do list is updated, Aaron's calendar is updated, Aaron's syllabus is updated, but everybody else's is left alone, right? And I can add as many of these as I need. I can add them by group or by section. So it's very, very easy for me to add additional due dates without creating duplicates of my assignments, without creating duplicates of my quizzes, right? I can just make that one change that I need without having to rebuild the entire universe. And on the question side, we have this idea of groups, which is what you're seeing here. So I have these two groups, one at the top and one at the bottom, where I'm pulling in from external question banks that aren't in my course. And then I have another group that I actually created. So I've authored a couple questions in here, and when the students come and take this, they'll randomly get one of these two questions, right? So there's going to be a lot of randomization in how this quiz is given out to each student. And if I've allowed multiple attempts, they're going to get a randomized quiz each time they take it. And if we look at the actual questions themselves, let's take a look at this one. We have all the types you're probably familiar with: multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, multiple blanks, multiple answers, multiple drop-downs, matching, numerical formula, essay, file, upload. All of those up through essay will grade themselves. Obviously, essay questions you still have to grade by hand. You'll get a nice little notification that lets you know that it needs to be done. Anything else is just going to get automatically graded and returned to the student. And then you can also allow them to just upload a file. We've seen some really cool courses in sign language and foreign languages where the entire quiz is just the instructor creates a question where they speak in a foreign language or they do sign language right into the rich content editor, and then the student does that back into their webcam as their quiz question response. Very, very easy to do these kinds of more interesting, media-rich things when you have the tools built right in. What I really love, though, is right down here in the actual answer choices themselves. So a lot of quizzes, we know from data that most quizzes are going to be the auto-grading type, right? We're all teaching larger and larger courses. We just can't sit down and grade 600 essays, right? We can't. But that means that these quizzes have a bad kind of opportunity to fall into where the student takes a quiz, they get a 7 out of 10, and then that's it. That's like the end of the story for them. Well, why did I get a 7 out of 10, right? Was that good? Should I have done better? Should I have done worse? Like, how am I performing? So we have this idea of actual item level feedback where each item can have independent feedback. So if a student answers this question wrong, they're going to see this feedback. If they answer it wrong in this different way, they're going to see different wrong feedback. And the reason this is valuable is because I have the same rich content editor here for this feedback that I have everywhere else, which means right inside the question feedback, I can say, here's why this is wrong, and then I can link them back to the part of the course that has the content they need to review. If they got it right, maybe I can embed a YouTube video of Keyboard Cat to help them celebrate, right? But I can use this rich content, this ability to link around in Canvas, the ability to embed documents and images and things right inside the question, the answer choices, and the feedback to those answer choices. So once this is set up, I've taken my kind of flat, hey, you got a 7 out of 10 quiz, and I've really turned this into a more interesting automated feedback loop. So now I'm incentivized as an instructor to give them multiple attempts on this because they're going to be incentivized to get that feedback, go review material, come back and try and get a better score, right? And that's really what I want, is I want them to feel incentivized to keep engaging with my course material. And this really helps kind of automate some of that. Any questions about quizzes or assignments before going to some general course settings?
Do you get analytics on that in terms of like the determination of the difficulty level of the questions, either in a pool or just by an individual test?
Yeah. So let me come here into the Canvas guides. So what I just did is I clicked on the help button, which is available everywhere in Canvas, and then I went up to the guides. This is obviously a demonstration course for privacy reasons. We don't have real data that we're going to show. But what I want to do is show you here in the guides. All of our guides are public, so anybody can come in here at any time and search for anything. Because Canvas is versionless software, like Eddie mentioned, we have an in-house documentation team that runs all of our documentation. So when we make changes, that documentation is updated right away, unless my Wi-Fi goes down, in which case nothing works, because everything lives on the internet. But the nice thing about the guides, which is just it's community.canvaslms.com, so you don't have to be a customer or anything to get in there, is that for any of those kinds of questions, like how does this tool work, what does it look like, we have beautiful screenshots. Everything is nice and set up and maintained by us, so if it changes, we go in and update it. And really, is my Wi-Fi really down? It's a tragedy. That's why we need Google to just bring us Google Fiber everywhere. Let's see. I'll let it try and reload one more time in the background. But yeah, so we have quiz statistics. We do like kind of a meta-analysis on different questions. Obviously, certain questions like essay questions, we can't do that for because it's not being automatically graded. We don't have data across users. But for any of the automatically graded question types, we do a discrimination index once there's more than 5 submissions, I think. And then it'll just continue to add data as more students take the quiz. And that's going to give you an idea of how well is that question performing. If it's performing poorly, how are the students broken out? So say it's like a standard for ABCD multiple choice question. I can see, are most students answering A? Are most answering B? Are they perfectly evenly distributed, which is not good because that means they're just kind of all over the place. And that's broken out in a nice kind of green-black, really obvious chart that I would love to show you a screenshot of if my Wi-Fi was still up.
Is that just for the course, or is that the whole history of the problem?
So that's going to be for that quiz. So if you wanted to correlate across multiple attempts of that same question use, all that data is extractable, and then you could collate it together. So if you teach the same course over and over, or maybe you're co-instructing with someone else who's using those same questions, you can pull all of that data out in a nice flat spreadsheet kind of format, and then you could collate it together and do a larger analysis. Canvas also has a feature built in called Canvas Data, which is not typically used by individual instructors, but by the institution as a whole, the administrators. And that's like a bulk data set of everything that's going on inside Canvas. So for like real big data analysis, you would probably lean toward that feature.
And while we're on quizzes, if the quizzes were written in Blackboard tools, how easy is that to port over to Canvas?
So I mentioned LTI earlier. That's an IMS global standard. The standard for quizzes is called QTI. That is actually one of the standards that Blackboard supports. So if you export your Blackboard course and it's using quizzes, they're going to come out in that standard. And then we have a built-in Blackboard importer that'll suck all that stuff right in.
And so the equation editor in Blackboard is compatible with the equation editor in Canvas?
As long as they're exporting any of that content in a standards-based format or in a format that we can know about, yeah, we can convert it.
And the pools in Blackboard get turned into what do you call it in Canvas? Call them
Groups. Yeah, question groups.
Canvas would know to turn a pool into a group.
Yes. Yeah. Let me see if I'm back up here. I can actually show you a little bit about how that tool works. This is the content importer. So if I was bringing a course in from Blackboard, this is where I would come. But this is also where I would go if I wanted to copy a course from a previous semester, right? Like I said, most of us kind of roll our courses over semester after semester. So I can say I want to copy a Canvas course. You can see Blackboard's also right down here. So if I have that Blackboard Export package, I can select any of the courses that I have taught previously. I can say whether I want to move all the content or just specific stuff. I think that's particularly convenient if you're taking a course over for someone else, or if you're revamping a course you haven't taught in a while. Maybe you don't want to bring everything and then carve stuff out. You just want to bring over the stuff you want, right? So we let you do that at import. But really, the winning feature here is the ability to adjust events and due dates. Oh, my goodness, excuse me. So this instance is not connected to a student information system. Of course, yours would be, so these dates would actually be pre-configured for you. And what this is going to do is it's going to take all of your due dates from the last time you taught this course, and it's going to slide them all into the term of this new future course, right? And if you're really unlucky, like I have always been, and the last time you taught it, it was a Monday, Wednesday course, and this time it's a Tuesday, Thursday course, you can actually tell it to also change the days as well as sliding. It really is. This alone, I think, probably saves me about 2 hours every semester. But this is nice because I don't want to have to think about this, right? Like, this is robot work. So we just allow you to do this at import time and then slide everything over, and then you're much closer to that course being ready to teach for the new semester than if you had to go in and update all those things. And then remember, because those dates are being updated, your syllabus is now updated. The students will get an accurate to-do list as each week opens up. Your modules have been updated. The calendar is updated, right? Everything is updated.
You said you were connecting to the dates within your student system?
Mm-hmm.
So that mean you're heading back to the beginning of the term dates, or what kind of dates are you talking about?
So typically, in most student information systems setups that I've seen, there's going to be term dates, and then there's also going to be course dates. So I may be teaching a course that's in the fall term, but it starts like a week after fall.
So it's going to look specifically
Yeah.
dates associated with that course.
With that course, yeah. Yeah, for exactly this reason, because almost every course ends up being an edge case where it either starts a little early or a little late, or it ends a little early or ends a little late. Yeah, so we have an idea of term dates and course dates have priority over term dates. Just so you can see what that content selector looks like, if I am bringing in just pieces of a course, it's very easy for me to come in and say, maybe I want a whole module of content, maybe I just want individual assignments, or I want some of the quizzes, right? So instead of bringing in all this stuff and then having to chop out the pieces I don't want, I can say, just give me the few pieces that I do want. Excuse me again. I've come back to the homepage here because you asked about quiz analytics. And we also have this idea of course analytics. So this is something that's available in every course. Every instructor just gets access to this tool. I can see activity over time in my course. And in Canvas, you'll see this idea of views and participation. And the idea of a participation is they had to participate. Yes, we named it well. And a participation means like they submitted a quiz, they submitted an assignment, they posted to a discussion, right? Just looking at a discussion as a view, posting to that discussion would be a participation. Under the submissions here, you can see that my fake students have been performing terribly. They've missed almost every single assignment. But this is giving me a very clear breakdown of what was missing, what was late, and what was on time. If you remember when I was setting those due dates, I can set a late range. So I can say it's due on October 5th, but up to the 10th, I'll still accept it, and it'll automatically get flagged late, just like we saw in the Speedgrader. It'll give me that little late flag, and that's when I would start to see these yellow bars show up. I also have a grade heuristic breakdown, but then when I come down to the bottom and I see my list of students, I can actually come into an individual student's analytics, and now I'm seeing that same data, but just for this student. What does their activity look like? If I've had some back and forth communication with them, what does that look like? What does their submission breakdown look like? What's their grade heuristics look like? And another place that you can see we're really focused on that kind of student experience is that students can see this. They can't see the course-wide stuff because then they would be seeing things about their peers, but they can see their own analytics. So any student can come in and click on this and get this exact same view exactly like you and I are seeing it now, right? So if you ever say to them, like, oh, I noticed you haven't logged in. They're like, no, I have. And you can say, like, no, go look at your analytics. I know you haven't. Right? But be more polite than I am. Let me pause right there for a second because there's a couple other kind of highlight things I'm going to jump around a little bit between with the few minutes before I sort of open up for general questions. Any questions about any of the things we've seen so far? Yeah, so we call that quiz moderation. So when I take a look at my quiz, oh, excuse me again. And I say I want to moderate this quiz, I can select one or more students. I can choose if I'm giving them an extra attempt or just extra time or both, right? This one happens to be time restricted, so I can say that they're going to get more time or that they're going to get more attempts depending on which particular need I'm catering to.
For late work, you said it gets a flag. Is it possible to put in built-in automatic grade adjustment for late work?
So we haven't done that yet, and here's why. In our community, there's a separate area from the guides where you can discuss feature ideas. Because Canvas is a single platform, all 20 million some odd of our members are in one community. So there's certain ideas that tend to come up over and over. And we see that one every once in a while. And the reason it continually kind of gets beaten back is there is not a consensus on whether or not the system should ever make a grade decision on your behalf. So some people are very in favor of that, like, no, I don't care, just knock them down 10%. And other people are like, no, I have final say over their grade. And because we haven't reached a good consensus on how we would ever prevent that from being ambiguous, we've held back on it for now. But this is a thing that's in our community that is really excellent. Because sometimes people will say, like, why haven't you done X? And we want to be able to show exactly why. Here's the discussion around this idea. Here's why we haven't found the right user experience for it. So that particular feature idea does come up once in a while. But I think until we know it is 100% of the time unambiguous, we'll probably hold back on anything that does auto-grading.
You do not build in an automatic penalty in your rubric when you put in, when you flag this late, when you put in 2 point values there, where the instructor can make that decision.
So for the rubric, when I was going through, I was just clicking through the matrix. But we've actually made it so that you can just go to the end and manually enter a score, because sometimes that's going to happen. Where you're like, well, it's not quite a 3 and it's not quite a 5. I want to give them a 4, but I don't have a box for a 4. So you can just go to the end of the rubric and manually enter a 4, and then you can even manually enter comments. Here's why I gave you something different than what the rubric says. So in most cases, you're going to just click through the rubric and it'll hopefully meet your grading needs. But if you need to break outside of that structure, you can always do that. So what it'll actually do, especially if there's already been submissions, I should say, is it will ask you what you want to do. Do you want to give everybody the points because you made a mistake and you're just feeling generous? Do you want to make it different from this point forward? So now it will grade differently from here on, but it won't change any existing grades? Or do you want to regrade everyone regardless of what they've already put? So when you make a change, it's going to ask you, for this change, what would you like me to do? Oh, my goodness, excuse me. You're all being very patient with me. I appreciate it. So let me highlight quickly a couple things in here, and then I'll just kind of leave it open for general questions. You guys may have noticed I didn't really include the gradebook in my main highlights, and that's because I don't like thinking about my gradebook. I want to evaluate my students. I want to give them feedback. I want to get grades to them, but I do all that in the Speedgrader. And what I really don't want to do is have to set up a gradebook. I've taught in a lot of different LMSs, and the idea of here is my work, and then here is a spreadsheet, and I have to make these two things know about each other is bad. So the gradebook in Canvas is very much just a reflection of your Canvas course. If I create a new assignment, it gets a gradebook column. If next semester I decide I don't want that assignment and I delete it, the gradebook column goes away. Right? So this is just going to show my gradable work. And I can come in here and I can drag and drop and reorganize columns if I want to change the way it looks. I can import and export this if I want to keep a local copy of my gradebook. Because this is all stored up in the cloud, we actually do maintain a grading history. So if you want to see the entire history of every grade you've ever done, what I think is particularly handy about this is if you're lucky enough to have a co-instructor or a TA, you want to see a grade that they changed because you're like, I don't remember giving that grade. I can come in here and I can see those before and after grades. And then I can revert to any of those. If I don't like the score that's in there, I can switch back to the old one, right? It's just one of those economies of scale we get in the cloud is we can store this kind of data. Probably the most common thing used in the gradebook is this feature called muting. So I can mute an assignment or a discussion or a quiz. And this means that my students can't see their grade or their feedback until I unmute this assignment, right? So if I want to grade everybody and then give them all back their grades and feedback all at once, I can mute this, do all of my grading and evaluating, unmute it, everybody gets notification that their grades are ready. But I think my favorite one, because I do remember the bad old days of copying and pasting in Outlook, is this one called Message Students Who. So I can say, I want to message all the students who haven't submitted yet, or who maybe scored less than a 7 out of 10, right? And you can see it automatically figures out who meets that criteria, and then I can say, you did bad, feel bad, so bad. It's amazing they still let me teach. What's important to understand about this is that each of these students is going to get a private message, right? So Annie is not going to know that I told Bill and Aaron that they also did bad, right? This is a private message. If the student replies, it's only going to come to me. It's not going to go to the other students. Yeah.
Yes, but I know you don't answer. What about the publisher content that we use that has quizzes and assignments inside it? I know it interfaces somehow, so when I change columns in the assignment, if I delete an assignment, it would delete the column in the gradebook automatically as well.
So that, unfortunately, is up to the publisher. So the LTI spec supports those kinds of connections, but because it's an open standard, that means third parties are free to be terrible. So all the big publishers, McGraw-Hill, Cengage, Pearson, they know that this is their bread and butter, right? They know they need to have a tight, super seamless integration, and those ones all work very well, right? That's why they're kind of on top of the heap as far as publishers go. But they can all behave very differently, right? And this is something where we see the Canvas community actually being able to rally together. Kind of like I said with Films on Demand, they were well established as an organization, but they didn't have an LTI because that wasn't widely supported, because Canvas supports that standard, and because we've been having such success in the market, Canvas customers were able to get together and say, like, hey, you need to do this integration. We need to have this super slick integration. And it's exactly the same thing with the publishers. They kind of jumped on the bandwagon a little bit more on their own. They didn't have to be pushed quite so much, but they know that that integration needs to be tight. And they're very receptive to hearing from people when it's not, because they know if they fix it for you, they've fixed it for the other 20 million Canvas customers too.
Well, because you know, it's Blackboard, Cengage, and anyway, Pearson, not all of them with Blackboard currently synced up correctly. So one integration is great, and the other one you got to manually upload the assignments to the gradebook separately.
Yeah. So I won't bore you with all the technical details, but each of those platforms handles integrations in a very different non-standards-based way, which is why we pushed that LTI standard so hard. Because then McGraw-Hill and Cengage and Pearson and everybody else have the exact same abilities. Nobody gets special access to Canvas. Nobody gets like a little secret backdoor into the database or anything. Everyone has the same standards-based way to integrate into the gradebook, to integrate into assignments, to integrate into the calendar, to everything else.
I'm sure that you work with other campuses that are banner schools that feed the student populations by course, through that system. So if the student drops or withdraws, their record in the course is maintained in that history up until the point that they were removed from the course?
Yeah. So one of the secrets with Canvas is that we never really delete anything. Everything is what's called soft deleted. So say a student is dropped for non-payment, and then they find their checkbook, they get their act together, whatever it might be, and then they pay, they're re-enrolled in the course, everything just pops back up. All the data, any submissions they made, everything is just exactly as it was before they were deleted. Yeah.
That's the last of my questions. But the assignment with the check mark?
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's complete, incomplete. And in Canvas, there's only one icon that shows up, a check mark, whether they did it or not. So if a student doesn't do that assignment, do they get a check mark, or is there another icon?
If it's marked incomplete, it would be an X. Yeah. So you can grade a few different ways. There's points, obviously, my favorite because it's very simple. Percentages, complete, incomplete. You can also do custom grading schemes. Actually found out just a few months ago that the custom grading schemes don't have to just be boring things like letters. You can use emoji. And what's exciting to me about that is all of the clever emoji you can use for an F. So, things to think about.
Well, do you guys also integrate badges? So it would be badges, like I just saw what you had on that last one, where they get an email if they don't do well. You can send a message if they are doing well. Sit too. That are there badges that I can send something to say, wow, you made perfect score on here, or we really got this concept. Is there anything like that?
Yeah, so there's 3 different badging platforms I'm familiar with. One of them was actually built by our founder. It's available in that LTI list. It's called Canva Badges. That one is free. And then there's 2 others that are partners of ours. One of them is called Credly, and the other one is called Badger with like a no E at the end. I think both of those have a cost, but I'm not sure. Those are, that's their entire business is doing badges, so they're very robust tools that you can integrate either into your course or in campus-wide and do exactly those kinds of things. Yeah.
They're real successful with basic skills students, I find.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I think there's a big shift overall coming from the big rectangular piece of paper that says, I learned all the things to more granular credentialing, and badging is going to be a big pusher of that. Yeah. Did I see another hand a second ago? Okay. The last 2 things I just want to quickly highlight before we all get dismissed a few minutes early is we do have built in this idea of conferences and collaborations. Do you guys use like Adobe Connect or like a WebEx or Zoom? Oh, right. And CCC Confer, I think, is that Blackboard Collaborate underneath?
Yeah.
Okay. Funny story about that. That's actually an LTI. You can use that in Canvas. But we have this built-in one. You can integrate lots and lots of other web conferencing tools. But we have a nice built-in one called Bigbluebutton. And this is going to look and work a lot like any other web conferencing tool that you may be familiar with. It's going to have an area to do whiteboard or screen share. I can do chat. I can do webcams and microphones, right? It's a web conferencing tool. The nice thing is that it's just built right in. If I leave this tool open and accessible, my students can actually create their own conferences. So if I'm teaching a hybrid or a fully online course, I don't have to provide additional separate tools to them. I can just say, hey, if you guys want to meet, this is built right into Canvas. You can go in there, set up your own little meetings, and have a Bigbluebutton meeting right inside Canvas. And then the idea of collaborations is a Google or Office 365 campus, 365. So we have built in the ability to connect to Google Docs or to the Office 365 suite of tools, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And then I can actually create these documents right here. It handles the permissions and the sharing for me. So I can assign a document to the whole class. I can assign a document to an individual or to a group of individuals. And then I don't have to then go into Office and say, okay, add Bill and Eddie and Tammy, right? It's just going to share it with the correct people. And then that whole experience will just happen right here inside Canvas. And just like with the conferences, I can leave this tool open. And I can just let students create their own collaborations if I want to. Right. So we're trying to integrate these external tools where it makes sense and still have the experience feel seamless, right? Like it's all still happening right here inside Canvas. So I think before my voice gives out on me completely, thank you guys very much for having us out. We do have, I think, about, 8 minutes left. So if you have any other questions, please do feel free to ask. Or just applause. Applause is fine.
Switch.
Thank you.
And I have an issue. Who do I contact?
So right here in this help button, you would see a 1-800 number right in here that you guys can call 24 hours a day. Or, yeah.
And for the students too,
Right. Yeah, that's faculty and students. Oh, no, it's a real, honest-to-God person. We don't outsource our support. It's all handled by our employees in-house right in Salt Lake City in our main office. We have a...
We're switching over to computers and
robots soon? Okay, so it'll be robots in the near future. I think we have like a 94% first contact resolution. So the person who answers the phone is also the person who fixes the problem.
Cindy did submit a question already. She left, but she got her question answered very quickly. So.
That's what I like to hear.
The gentleman asked all the questions and he ran out of here. He had a lot of good questions.
They'll miss y'all.
Thanks for sitting, everybody, and